Hello and welcome, ladies and gents. Now, for those who joined me for the EU RMR video, I said for RMR I'm going to be joined by Paladin as we're going to discuss sort of everything, how we think, and of course go for our comparisons coming in towards RMR. Of course, at the time of recording, we're already kind of midway through RMR. It's been full of plenty of upsets from the get-go, as this always is. So predictions always so difficult. Best of ones for the majority of the games, and then best of threes for elimination or promotion, I guess you could call it, in towards the major itself. It's always tough to call. But of course, we said throughout this year we're going to be comparing and contrasting our opinions and putting something on the line. So that's what we're going to be doing.
Yeah, I mean, I actually thought the Blast Groups one went pretty well. The
Yeah,
pick'ems were pretty fun, and we did the fantasy. And honestly, we might as well just take a look at them before we get into
sure.
the RMRB, because it was honestly pretty close. Like we were obviously only off by one on the actual
Yeah.
pick'ems themselves. I picked Falcons, you picked Astralis, and then everything else we had was the same. But then we go over to the fantasy, and I
Yeah.
believe I had like maybe 50, 60 points more than you.
Yes. Yeah.
So as far as the punishment goes, we just pretty much called it a stalemate for this one, just because we didn't actually talk about what we wanted to value more than the other. So
True.
moving forward, we'll probably go with just the pick'ems, and we'll
Yeah.
do like a joint fantasy because it looks like you guys do like the fantasy aspect of it, which will be
Mhm.
fun. But yeah, I mean, honestly, I'm pretty satisfied with how everything went.
Yeah.
It definitely feels like we know what we're talking about, at least in terms of some of the pick'ems.
That's
But
good, isn't
yeah.
it? Jeez.
Yeah.
We bad, we were coming in towards this episode, and we got kind of like 3 out of 10, and be like, ah, damn, like that is rough.
Yeah.
But I think as well for Blast, they kind of need to figure out sort of like teams advancing to spring final, like that needs to be a little bit clearer because
Hmm.
they need to make it a way where it's like. I put Astralis, but then Astralis and Na'Vi, both of them I put as my, finalists to go through, and then they did. But yeah, I think they need to fix that in the sense that it should be teams that advance, but not through the group. I have to go through the kind of the secondary quality.
The
Yeah, they need
play-in
to.
thing.
Yeah,
Yeah,
they need
yeah.
to figure that out because, I mean, technically, I could have just put Vitality and Phase in both of those as like a
Hmm.
guarantee. So it's a little bit of a weird one, but I think hopefully Blast do fix it. And then it makes more sense because you can just cheese an extra 2 points there.
Right.
But yeah, I think overall we're pretty satisfied. Of course, now we're going to be going on towards the EU RMRB. Now this, of course, starts tomorrow at the time of release, but of course in a couple of days at the time of recording. With Group A kind of already well underway, we've already seen plenty of upsets, which is kind of always a story, but it's the same vibe for those who've been following along for the RMRA. Top 8 teams make it to the major. The 3 after that, so 9 to 11, make it to the LCQ. And then through the LCQ, of course, it's 3 teams from EU RMRB, 3 teams from A, and only 1 team makes it to that final spot of the major. So it's but I mean, obviously, in a weird way, I don't think you even want that. Especially, I think if we saw this last time. I think it was with FaZe, if I'm right in
Phase and
saying,
C9.
who were in
And
Group
C9.
A, and they had to then wait an extra. Well, it was a week for Blast, but for this one's only kind of like just under. So I think it's like 5-6 days. But even that's still horrible. Like having to wait like 5-6 days just sit around. Hard prac, hard scrim. No, that LCQ is brutal. In a weird way, it kind of feels, if you're like a tier 2 team, making it just going from somewhere 12th to 16th kind of feels a little bit better in a weird way. If you have zero expectations, than having to be in Group A and then stick around for the LCQ, only to have little to no chance of making it through, kind of thing.
Yeah, no, definitely. I do still feel like the LCQ provides a lot of entertainment for us at
Oh, for
home. Like
sure.
that Phase C9 best of three was just so exciting to watch.
Banger.
And I think we might have something similar to that this time around, considering where some of these teams are at in A, where I feel like it's gonna be
Mhm.
cutthroat there. And here the teams that we have, I can definitely see a team like, Apex, Gamer Legion, OG, all these teams to potentially slip up and then have
Mhm.
to go up against like, a team like Preezy or a team like
Yes.
Guild Eagles who get really dangerous in those cutthroat games. So I'm very curious to see like who we could actually pick at the end of all of this. But we'll go through basically the pick'ems or the pick'em predictor site, the simulation site, and we'll
Yes.
try to figure out who we want to go through. We'll have like two windows up
Mhm.
back and forth between who we want to go through, and we'll kind of just talk through the matchups together as we
Yeah.
originally planned to do.
Yes, of course. We already did actually record this once, but OBS decided to force an update, which just completely shafted a lot of audio drivers. But We've rolled it back. Hopefully this is fine. We're praying to the gods. I can see both our voices moving on the side. So let's see. Either way, yeah. So we're going to be having 2 winners up. You kind of can't see anything. There's no difference right now. But as we go along, these will start to sort of change. So one being my window, one being Paladin's. And of course, in hindsight, we'll come back and look at this video, and that's where the punishment will derive from. Because first of all, there's no way we're getting all these right. It's, I think, kind of beyond impossible. Because it's best of ones. Because of all these upsets, and because of, one upset completely changes how this kind of system sort of plays out, it's going to be up in the air. But we'll see. Anyway, let's get things started. We'll get into the teams. And of course, once we're done with this, we'll do a quick fantasy together after. It's not really a competition, but just kind of see where we agree on and what not. So round 1, Vitality versus Gamer Legion. This one, I think, is relatively simple. I think Vitality shouldn't have too much problem. I know they had a pretty big hiccup at Kato, finishing dead last, which, I mean, that in itself is kind of baffling. I don't think they'll struggle that much here. I think they should be absolutely fine. Game Legion look a lot better. They're actually looking like a solidified tier 1 team at the moment, in my opinion, but I don't see this one being too much of an issue.
Yeah, I don't think so either. I just feel like this Vitality team, sure, they had that hiccup, and to me, it just feels like a hiccup. It doesn't feel like, they're just going to completely implode. Like, you still have Zio, you still have the best player in the world, you still have the best IGL in the world in Apex. Like, surely that duo enough should get you through a lot of these matchups. And I think Gamer Legion just a bit too for them to potentially get an upset. It's a step too far because you look at their roster and just pound for pound, how do you really stack up against Zaiwu and Spinks? You just kind of can't. And while I do think they'll be able to hang around this competition, I think that this is a really tough one. And I think it's a similar situation for when I look at the Mouse and the Guild Eagles matchup, where to me, I just feel like the Guild Eagles, sure, very similar to when they were BNE, we're kind of having a fall off on online, but this somehow feels like a newer low, and Mouse feel like they're just a step above in pretty much every way.
I agree. I think, honestly, Guild have actually looked really rough recently. Some of these performances are not being good enough. I mean, a lot of these quals that they've been trying to make it through, struggling quite badly. I mean, we saw the national championships, lost against Pera in that final, and they can, come out and make all these allegations here and there, but, when it comes down to it, a loss is a loss, and it's not the only loss or big loss they've had. I think the Blast qual, they had a pretty bad one as well, losing to a couple of considerably lesser teams than sort of what's expected. I think even a mix, I'm right in saying. So it's not been looking good for Guild. I think Mauser's kind of composure at the moment, they look pretty good. I also, do you know what? Brolin's coming towards his team and he's looked all right. I think I was actually, I was ready to be like, yeah, Brolin is kind of like, he's not got it anymore. He's just like mentally not there. But in all fairness, he's actually been stepping up in quite a good way. And when you look at the team as well, if Guild try and play this like super scrappy or super puggy or whatever, in a way, Maus can do that and better. You got individuals like Zershin, who's so damn good. Yimfat can enter those conversations. Brolin can as well. If Shuhei wants to entry, he can too. And then even as well, in one of the most important factors, the AWP battle. We can have all these question marks about Torzi as where he stands in tier 1, but he's, in my opinion, levels above GXX.
Yeah, GXX really has struggled on the opping, and I don't really consider him an opper, to be honest with you, because of how bad he is. And I think they're just so heavily reliant on their rifles to pop off in, Juan Flatro and your Regons. But at the end of the day, I just think that I look to even Shuhei to open up bomb sites for them. As you said, Zershin is an electric entry. And that alone fills me with enough confidence that Mal should be comfortably taking that. Yeah. And I do feel in a similar way, like the Spirit matchup for Ents is going to be really hard for them because I think this matchup is really exciting because I love both of these teams. But the problem is that like you can't really stop Spirit right now, and I don't think anybody can, other than maybe Vitality if they're on a good day. But we don't even know if Vitality have anything to say against this team. It's for that reason, like, Ents just has a lot of work to do, and it'll have to be in the 0-1 bracket, I feel.
Yeah, I mean, the thing that, which is kind of hilarious, is what we saw at Kato, this kind of big run that Ents made. A lot of it came off the back of one man top on the scoreboard, Glaive, which, I mean, that was never expected. Glaive, Lukash himself, was pushing this team to newer heights. It was absolutely baffling. But man, all credit to how well they played at Kato. I think there definitely is question marks about the kind of the Polish buff in a way. I think we always have to talk about that in terms of like, a Polish core in Poland, wanting to play in front of their home crowd, and they really were willed on to do it. I think Hades is putting up incredible numbers, which is good to see. But Hades has got to go against Shiro. There's no competition there at the moment with how well Shiro is playing. Shiro is putting up MVP level numbers, but it doesn't help when you've got Donk, who, what is he averaging, like a 1.61 against top 5 teams? Like, insane. I think if Spirit even bring half of the performance they brought at Kata, I mean, just look at that final, for example. If they bring even half of that performance, they're still one of the best teams in the world. That's how good they've been recently.
And then still, they just don't feel any pressure. Like I
Yeah.
can't even play that card with how young this roster is. You would
Mhm.
expect that maybe they'd crumble here and there, but Zontix is like this stable,
Yeah.
fierce player on the server that cannot be moved. And then you allow to have Donk to just run around the map with his like a headless chicken, just
Uh-huh.
popping heads left and right, and it just feels like a no question in my
Mhm.
mind. But I look at the next matchup. That also feels very similar.
Yeah.
Monty versus Ecstatic. I don't know. I really don't think this Ecstatic roster is anything exciting.
I agree. I agree.
I'm sure you echo the sentiment because Monty will always provide to me a certain level of gameplay, and I expect that from them.
Mhm.
And that's too much for Ecstatic to handle, in my opinion.
Yeah, I mean, there's no two ways around it. Monty, of all the teams that kind of made, all the tier 2 teams that made top 8 at the major, you've got obviously Monty, Apex, Into the Breach, and Gamer Legion. I think Monty have actually been the most stable tier 1 team of all of them, even with the loss of Boros as well, right? They brought Bro into as a team, and he actually slotting quite nicely, quite easily. I think for Ecstatic, even them making it here, for me, feels like quite a big thing. But when it comes down to if Ecstatic got any sort of chance, even being kind of competitive in this tournament, you've got to look at Kragan or Crown, however you pronounce it, and for him to be putting up 1.2, 1.3 ratings most maps. Like they're so reliant on Kragan where, you look at Monty, Bro can step up in a big way. Demka is a little bit inconsistent, but when he has those pop-off maps, he can be so important. And STY puts up numbers too. So I think there's so many different facets of firepower for Monty where there isn't for Ecstatic. We've already echoed our sentiments about what we think of Salazar the Orpa in terms of maybe being, well, not even maybe, probably being considered to be quite overrated. He really does struggle, and I think against this sort of team, I think he will. It's more of the same. I really just see Monty being head and shoulders above Ecstatic here.
Yeah, and then you also, I mean, I gotta give credit to Krasnal, who I think
Yeah.
he has had a huge bump up in CS2, and it continues to be the same
Mm-hmm.
going into 2024. So I just feel like the rifle core is so much stronger. And yeah, I mean, I don't even know if we even have to talk about the next matchup. For me personally, I think that C9 is pretty comfortably head and shoulders above Para.
Yeah.
Um, I know you were mentioning that it could be closer just because of how competitive Para were in the conference, but
Mm.
to me, I just feel like when the chips are down, I always favor experience, and for
Yeah.
that reason, I'm gonna be going Perfecto Electronic every day of the week.
Yeah, I think as well, Cloud9's at the moment for me seem to be a side who, when they're against considerably worse opponents, they play actually quite calm, just like the Cloud9 that we know. But when they're against, more high pressure games, that's actually when we see them crumble. But I think honestly, just, an individual like Boomich, he's just going to call the most wacky style of Counter-Strike against Pera and just get up in their face. And I think, I mean, honestly, I just think Cloud9 won't respect him. So I think this game could be kind of close. And I think actually Para have been playing some quite decent Counter-Strike. I think Aaron's been looking pretty good. He's been putting up good numbers. Same with Camion. But this is going to be a big test for Para. I'd still going to bank on Cloud9 here. The next game, though, is actually the first one where there's actually a bit of a conversation to be had. Because you've got Apex, who have looked a little worse for wear. I think it goes without saying. They've looked a little bit all over the place, a little bit up and down in terms of performances. And then you got OG, who are the king of looking all over the place. I mean, this side is the org is a mess. There's no two ways around it. I mean, you saw Sponge talking about it anywhere. He was like, I refuse to let JKS go and play for a team like NIP or OG. And you can see why. You got NIP, like, currently, O2 or whatever in RMR at the time of recording. And you got OG, who, to a weird way, could have a similar destiny. Yeah, I mean, OG are it feels like one of the worst run organizations in terms of the roster moves. I do actually like the Heavy God pickup, though. I think he actually is a pretty solid rifler. Is he tier 1 standard? No, not yet. Can he be? Maybe. But I think when it comes to OG, everything comes down to can Regali put up insane numbers for me. And like having to rely on your AWP like that all the time, I think is so difficult on him.
To me, I feel like Keto is probably the worst tier one IGL there is in the scene
Yeah.
right now. And I know that sounds bold to say, but it really like some of the T sides that this guy calls are just
Horrendous.
absolutely abysmal. And that you're going up against a new age IGL in Sense,
Mhm.
who on Apex I think has a lot to do, and I think he's still hung around pretty well. I mean, I liked what they showed at Kato,
Mhm.
and I'm impressed they were able to hang around as much as they did. Stiko seems obviously way better in what Sense's previous roles were, and that
Yes.
makes things a lot easier. Jacob still feels reliable, Nox still feels reliable, and Sasanita will have the odd pop-off game. I just feel like the stability of Apex is so much stronger, even though they're in this weird flux where Sense is still learning how to call, and Stiko's still trying to get fitted back into the team.
Yeah.
And even that feels far more stable than whatever OG is showing, because
Yeah.
I don't know who you look towards on this team bar Regali, and
Mhm.
even Regali is still struggling. Like, I don't
He
even think
is.
he's
Yeah.
at that same CPH Flames level that he was at anymore, because frankly he doesn't have any stability with the player like Bird from Sky calling his number. So
Yeah.
I feel like this OG team is gonna flounder, to say the least, at this event.
Yeah, I'm with you there. Next one is definitely more one-sided. I mean, all these first rounds are actually quite one-sided. There's not that much of a conversation, bar that last one, which we'll get to in a second. Astralis Nexus, I think we can sort of, for the most part, just skip right through this one. Astralis, yes, Kato didn't go to plan. Yes, it was a little bit shaky. They shouldn't have any problems against a team like Nexus. Nexus are the second lowest seed in this tournament in this side of the RMR, just behind Heroic. But realistically, Nexus are the worst team here. Rating, world standings, where they are in the world of Counter Strike right now, easily kind of the weakest team. So I think Astralis should be absolutely fine, right? This is, I think same with Vitality. When you go out early in a tournament the way they did, or same with VP, right? When you go out early in a tournament like Kato, yes, it's annoying, but it's quite motivating. You kind of like to fire up your ass, and I think it's going to give them. Oh, first of all, they've probably had an extra week or so compared to some of the other bigger name teams to just get home, prac, and just heavily hit kind of some sort of boot camp. And obviously for Astralis, they've just been back to the Nexus headquarters and really getting ready for this. But I don't see them making the same mistakes as Kato.
No, I don't think so either. And I think we'll keep talking about Astralis as we go on to the more deeper matchups.
Mm-hmm.
I think the most exciting round one matchup is Prezi versus Heroic.
Yeah,
That
man,
feels
history.
probably the closest. I'd say, because for me, Prezi are going the five rifle route. They won't have an ob in this situation, but you've got Dupree in the terms of the experience. You've got a couple pop off players in terms of like an Altex who could
Yeah.
take over a game for you, which is really exciting. And then on the heroic side of things, they're also still like kind of finding their footing, nearly a Kato playoff team. And in all honesty, I thought they were better than G2 in a lot of ways. So
Yes.
I honestly thought they should have been there. But they're a bit inconsistent, and I think they're still trying to find their footing. You don't know what you're gonna get from them in this matchup,
Mm-hmm.
but what I can say is that I really do like the core of this team in Kixan, Nertz, and Shush. Like that team, that core feels really stable. Tessas has his moments, and when he's on, he's really on.
It's
And
true.
same for Nikodas, but I think they're a little bit inconsistent. So I don't know. To me, this feels a little bit 50-50. I don't know about you.
I'm going quite heavy heroic here. For one minute, I actually think Prezi been playing really good Counter Strike. They won, I think it was EU Pro League, which is not ESL Pro League, European Pro League, which isn't the grandest tournaments, but there's some decent tier one teams that play it. And it was a best of 5. So they've got decent like wins under their belt recently, but they are tier 2 tournaments. I actually think heroic look quite good at the moment, and I think one of the things you mentioned is Prezi are one of the few teams, basically them and Cloud9, who are running this 5 rifle idea. I think it's quite a gamble, especially now with the Pika's advantage that's been changed. A lot of AWPers have really been stepping up in quite a big way. I mean, even Brokey was looking, considerabably more alive in the opening few games, just because that heavy swing meta isn't really there anymore. And whilst I think I'd probably still say he's one of the more fraudulent tier 1 AWPers than a Nikodas, I still think the fact that he doesn't have anybody to face off against is actually going to really help. He's going to have all the space to work with in these long-range battles. He's not going to feel the pressure of another AWPer to really matter about, and at range, he shouldn't have too much of an issue. And I think as well, when you look at Prezi, when they try and rely on kind of firepower and rifling cores, you've got mention like individuals like Dupree or Oltex, right? But when you look at the other side, when you've got individuals like Kixan, who can be so good as a rifler, even though, he's a caller who can frag heavy. You got Nertz, who still for me is one of the best riflers in the world right now. He's just absolutely unstoppable. I think this is a veto that will go down to quite a puggy style map. I wouldn't even be surprised if it hit something like a nuke. I know Pree's been playing that quite a lot recently, but I think Heroic can take him on it. I think, honestly, for me, this feels like Heroic should be relatively comfortable. But I think them having that number 16 seed is pretty brutal. I mean, same things happened to Falcons in RMR going from, phase, like a turn of fire to phase or something like that. It's like, it's rough, man. So Heroic are going to be made to work in this RMRB just because of their seeding alone. But I don't think they'll struggle, in my opinion, against Breezy.
Yeah, I think I'm with you. I think, as you said, I think the Nikolas angle is probably the biggest one for me. And I mean, you see it in like just pugs, right? Like where an opper is going up against 5 rifles, he can roll a roost, he can kind of swing into whatever angle he wants, take as many post up angles as he wants, and I think that'll make his job very easy. I don't think he has to really push or work too much in that game, especially if they play something like a nuke. I mean, if he goes outside, it's gonna be so free for him to just put in work. So yeah, I think Heroic should find an easy time here, and as you said, the seeding is going to really rub them the wrong way, and I think they're gonna have to be one of those like 2-2 teams to scrape through.
I think so
And
as
that's
well.
not even. I don't even think that's really a knock against them as a team. It's just this is how
Seeding.
the seeding works,
It's
really.
brutal.
And as you can see, look at that 1-0 bracket, like straight into it. Like you have to play Vitality, and I'm gonna favor Vitality there just because they're just a more consistent roster right now, and
Yeah.
I'm always gonna, Zaibu clears Nikolas in every sense of the word, and
Even the riflers
I'd
do as
much,
well. That's the thing.
yeah, I much rather prefer Spinks over Nertz, and to me that just feels like a pretty slam dunk there.
Yeah, I don't think it's that much of a conversation there. I think maybe Heroic will find they'll make it somewhat of a competitive game, but I think Vitality shouldn't have a problem. Even when it comes down to the vetoes as well, I think it should be pretty plain sailing. Then the next game, this one I think has a lot more of a conversation behind it. Maus taking on Astralis. You got Maus who, I actually think I've remained pretty consistent since having kind of Brolin into the team. But then you got Astralis who, obviously, Kato was not what they wanted. They looked pretty dreadful. I don't think there's any way about it. But it's like we were saying earlier, kind of the fire up their arse here. So where are you thinking Maus Astralis?
The thing about Maus is you mentioned about Brolin and you thought he was pretty good in his roles. I don't feel the same way entirely. I still feel
Okay.
like he's really inconsistent, and he's definitely nowhere near Frozen's ability.
Yeah.
My problem with it is that they're putting him in those similar roles, and he can't really produce as regularly as Frozen, and this is to be expected. I don't think there's anybody really that Mouse could have bought to really replace Frozen in any way, but it is their problem, and that does mean that you're gonna have to shoulder the responsibilities of fragging across the board to players like a Torji, players like a Zershin, and I think that Torji is a decent opper, but he's no device in my opinion.
I agree.
And you look at Zershin as well, and I think he's a fantastic entry. I think he really can put in some serious work, but he can be a little inconsistent, and if he doesn't have a good game, that's when I think Astralis can really capitalize. And I think they've done a really good job in terms of how they've measured out the roles. To me, like I feel like Blame F has now taken a little bit more of a back seat to give space to players like Stown and Yabi to kind of work. And that was what I think that my biggest worry was when they announced this Astralis roster. But Blame F is still fragging out even in some more compromising roles, and Stown is given enough space to perform as well. And for that, I just feel like I have an expectation that Astralis will perform here against Mouse.
I think that the big one for me is going to be that all battle. I think while I kind of favor Torzi against a lot of others in this group, not Device. I think Device is going to remain for the most part untouched all the way through. I mean, obviously that round 3 game we can get to in a little bit later, but I think at the moment I'm on the mindset. Obviously, it's kind of impossible to tell, but I'm on the mindset that like Kato was a hiccup, not a trend. It's not the start of what I think. Astralis is still a top 10 team. We all like the memes about Stabby and stuff, but that team is stacked. What is it, like 4 out of 5 are top 20 players?
Top 20.
Yeah. So I feel like at the moment you still can't bank against them. As much as you want to use Kato as the example, I think it was like the kind of the causations and correlation, or that kind of vibe. I think right now I'm still fully still heavy on the train of Astralis. Then into the next game, I think this one kind of writes itself here. I don't think Apex can even... I don't think they can scratch the surface. 13-0 in Kato, I think for me, speaks volumes. Regardless of what you want to say about Apex getting a little bit better in that kind of the second time round, they still got 13-0'd. Spirit arguably actually got better throughout the tournament from that 13-0. Like, not that they were bad during the 13-0, but the start of the tournament, they were like just finding their feet, and as they carried on playing, they got better and better. I don't think Apex are going to be the team to figure out how to beat Spirit. I don't know if any of these teams are going to be the ones to figure out how to beat Spirit, but I know for goddamn sure it ain't going to be Apex. I don't think it's even a conversation here.
No, I'm with you. I don't think there really is, and credit to Apex to get to this 1-0 bracket seemingly, but I think that this will be a pretty big wash if I had to say so. But the Monty C9 game, I think that's going to be a really exciting one because I think that Monty is a very formidable team for C9, and C9 are having some serious troubles. Axel's been having some struggles.
Yes.
Hobbit isn't necessarily, a top 20 player by any means, so that puts a lot of onus on that main old Na'Vi core, and that feels a little worrying, especially considering their opping is not very good. It's like a huge problem to me.
It's like who AWPs even as well. It's like Perfecto does it sometimes, and then now Boomich is doing it sometimes as well. So then you got Boomich who's entry fragging, AWPing, and IGLing, and getting map control on his own. It's like it's the most insane style of play for C9 that I don't think they even know what's going on.
And it works to some degree, but you've seen also the big pitfalls of it when they lose very badly, and it looks ugly. It looks like they're just playing puggy Counter-Strike and they don't really have a game plan. But I'm sure they do. But I don't know. To me, I actually feel like this is one of the best of ones that has upset written all over it. Okay. And Monty is definitely the team to try to surprise. I think World 2K, while he isn't the most consistent opper, I think he can take over. I feel like Demka, Krasnal, they're safe pairs of hands. And I think that alone to me just states that I think they'll bring a brand of Counter-Strike that Cloud9 can't keep up with.
Well, there we go. Okay, so you're going to go Monty here. Yeah, right. Here's my change. I'm going to go C9 purely off the fact of at the moment, while I worry about the AWPing, I think in best of ones, Cloud9 are going to try and veer this towards like a little bit more of a kind of a rifle heavy map for them to work with, where they won't allow the AWP to get all of that space. And I think probably on the other side too is a lot of the maps that I see Monty play occasionally, I've seen Cloud9 do quite well on as well. But I'm trying to be a hopeful here of like Axel realizes things are going bad, but maybe we see finally kind of the bit of a redemption coming from him. But I think just purely in terms of the rifling core, with like if you go pound for pound like throughout both of these two teams, I think maybe you can make the argument that STY is a better caller, but I rate Boomich as a better fragger than STY. Perfecto, I think, is the best sport player in the server, and Electronic's still, in my opinion, the best rifler in the server. So I think I'm going to go C9. I think it's going to be a close game, and I think you're spot on. If any of these games so far was going to be an upset, which is a callable upset, you know what I mean? This feels like the one. But I think that game is close nonetheless. I mean, that kind of feels like it's one of those games that got OT written all over it, basically, from the jump.
Yeah. I mean, I think my main issue is that, like, I do agree, Perfecto is the best support player in the server, but half the rounds he's going to be opping.
It's true.
That's probably the worst part about the C9 that I have, is that you have some of the best players pound for pound for their role, but they're not even getting to play the role that they're in because they have to pick up the op like it's some kind of, makeup assignment that they have to put forward. And it's just ridiculous. It doesn't actually let them play to the best of their abilities. And you can see that a lot of their numbers are taking a hit because of it. But I don't know. I think that'll be a very interesting game. I think the next one, Prezi Nexus, I'm really happy that Nexus is here. But to me, I just feel like Prezi, I kind of favor them in every sort of way here. Yeah. I do feel like the rifling core is pretty reliable. I like Dupree. I like Roy. And I think TMB calls a decent enough game. So this feels pretty open and shut for me.
Yeah, I don't think it's too much for comments. I think in terms of the type of tournaments they play are pretty similar. They're both kind of the upper echelon of tier 2, I guess you could say. But like, I don't rate Nexus even half as much. I think BTN's quite a good caller, in all fairness to him. I think he's a very smart guy. I think Sound has his moments as well, but I think Prezi in basically every single role are just pound for pound, just a better team. I don't think it's too much of a conversation. And kind of similar with the next game as well. You got OG, like we said, who are in flux all over the place. They're more or less exactly like NiP. Where Gamer Legion, in my opinion, are a solid tier 1 team, playing really good Counter-Strike at the moment, and actually taking some pretty big scalps. And you've even got individuals like Ash coming out and saying, like, I'm waiting for people to finally give us some respect at this, and they do deserve it. You got Volt, who, in terms of his rifling roles, doing a really decent job. All things considered, A-Core can be an absolute monster on the server, but I think probably the main one is Isaac, man. Isaac's looked so good recently, and if they can get kind of the Isaac who's that kind of self-sufficient fragger in a way, they're fine. I know there's been a lot of question marks about Kios, for example, or maybe even Snacks as a caller. But I still rate Gamer Legion in every way over this OG team, which still feels like it was pulled together off the back of nothing. It's just like stuck together with sellotape and a bit of blue tack kind of thing. I think this OG team is kind of one of those ones where it's like, they don't make it through to the major and then they make another change, whether it's like Keto or somebody, and you're like, oh great, like here we go, another OG change that nobody cares about. So I'm all in on Gamer Legion here. I don't think it'll be that close.
I agree with you. I think I'm going to take Gamer Legion. I think they're uptrending pretty heavily now, and I really like Synax's calling on this team. At least it's gotten more consistent, and he's been calling ever since that like Let Him Cook era, and I honestly thought he was pretty terrible then, but he's really stepped up now, and I mean he's clutching very, very well for them. And as you said, Isaac is so underrated. I think he's starting to get his flowers. And I honestly thought he should have been cut from this team a couple months ago, and I honestly thought he was a dead weight for this team.
Yeah.
Considering I thought he wouldn't be able to keep up his form, and he has, and he's honestly exceeded every expectation that I have from him, and that really makes things very easy for Gamer Legion. And I think this feels like a very interesting matchup because Gamer Legion has come into the spotlight only in the last year in Tier 1.
Yeah.
But OG has been in Tier 1 for ages, and yet still they are constantly mediocre, constantly an organization that I don't care about in Tier 1 Counter-Strike. And I really do like that game. I know. and that's a conversation we've had ad nauseum on 2.5 Talent, where we're like, teams like OG, teams like NIP don't really want to win all that much.
They try to be there, buy a spot and be there.
Right, but Gamer Legion do have that stake, and they do have the fire, and I do really like what the organization has done to basically draft a team to get into Tier 1 and now find a roster that they can actually sustain and maintain. And this team is also a profitable one as well. So that bodes really well for the future of this organization. And I think this matchup is just free for them. Really.
Yeah, they're a run well org, and it's good to see them continuing to compete. So good on Gamer Legion, man. I mean, we can. This is not the time or place to talk about it, but it definitely does. When you look at teams like OG and NiP, just make you think about that 2025 open circuit, man. Yes, they've made it through this qual, but they were in that last open qual. So I think it's like they're in the fourth one. I think they made it through. Oh no, third or fourth. I remember it was when I was at the HSC.
One of the last two ones.
Yeah, one of the last two. I think it might be in the third actually. But even still, there might not even be 3 quals for open quals for ESL challenges or IEMs or whatever. So or blast groups. I mean, man, they this is a team that really could be in trouble. Without those partner spots, I don't know what's going to happen. But we'll get to that at a later point. This next game is a cool one. There's actually a cool story here. While it looks like a game that a lot of people won't care about, these two sides played in the ESL National Championships with a Pro League spot on the line. It was the grand final. Myself and Scriv were casting it, and Peril won, only for all the guild guys to come out on Twitter and start saying, yeah, these guys are radar hacking, they're cheating, everyone. All of them came out saying like, I don't know why these guys don't get banned. So honestly, it's probably a bit of a revenge arc. I think this is one of those games where like the Counter-Strike is going to be whatever, right? It's going to be fairly okay-ish Counter-Strike, tier 2 Counter-Strike. But the camera angles and the when they hit the cams after every round, the noise is going to be sick. So obviously they kind of face each other, but with a screen in between. And that's going to be the best part. I think this is going to be the first game of all of them where we see people actually get super loud. If guilds start winning, they are going to be screaming at Para to like basically as a fuck you for the national championships. But if Para win, oh man, that is going to be like the shots, because then that for guild, it's like, in their minds, like, okay, we lost because we were playing against cheaters. If they then lose on land at an RMR, then it's like, shit, maybe we are just the worst team than them. So I think this one's gonna be such a cool game.
I always love the drama when
Yeah,
these kinds of games unfold, and I think the emotions are going to be an all-time high.
yeah.
That makes that makes it for exciting Counter Strike because you don't really, again, as you said, the Counter Strike is really whatever. I actually think it's going to be like terrible, like in
It
terms
was
of like
pretty bad
actually
at
watching
national
the game.
championships. Yeah,
I have no doubt in my mind that I'm not going to be actually watching the game for what it is, but only for the
the
after the
cams.
round plays where they're cutting the cams.
Uh
And
huh.
yeah, as you said, I think the afterwards of this game is going to be probably the best that I've ever been looking forward to, and I cannot wait. I hope all these opening round one matchups happen so we can just get
Just
this
get this.
0-1.
Yeah.
And I know everybody in tier two is gonna have their eyes glued to the screen because of this, and whatever fireworks that ensue will be great. Because,
Yeah.
as you said, if Peril win, I mean, I just cannot wait to see like the looks on these guild members' faces where they realize that yeah, maybe the allegations weren't true and we just
Yeah.
shit, like we just we
Well,
can't keep
also,
up.
as well, throughout the entire RMR Open quals, Pera had cameras behind them, like physical cameras set behind their screens, so you can see what they're doing, everything, everything in their setup to prove that they made it through without, cheats because they got so many allegations. So Guild saw that, ignored it, and then called them cheaters again. I don't think Pera are cheating. I think if they made it through the Open
Me
qual
neither.
already, I don't think they are. But oh, dude, I like this for me is two different things because Pera won that finals pretty convincingly. They were just a better team. I think Guild are pretty bad throughout that tournament, so I think you can probably make conversation about that. But then you got other narratives to bring in. Guild always power up on LAN. Guild always power up when it matters most, and when Guild get emotional, they become an unstoppable force. And I think they're going to be super emotional coming into this game because of the revenge they won. So you've got two different stories here. Where are you leaning before I give mine?
I do echo your sentiment. I think that when there is kind of pressure on the line and they actually feel like, oh, we've got something to prove and we
Mm-hmm.
feel like we need to show something on land, they do show it.
Yeah.
And no matter what the level of Guild Eagles are gonna be in this kind of a matchup, I just feel like they're fueled so heavily, and
Yeah.
for that, I think they're favored pretty heavily as well.
Mm-hmm.
And I'll take them in the matchup just because it doesn't matter really what the level is going into this land. It
Yeah.
just matters on the day what this match is, and I think they're just gonna take it.
See, I'm gonna go the other way. I want to make the call on Para because I actually think Para play good Counter Strike, but I think there's a world in which guilds get over emotional. They get like
Mm.
two in their own heads and
They've
like
done it before.
yeah,
They've done it before.
one
Yeah.
lost pistol and they just full tilt and to a point where
Hmm.
like Devil Walk can't control them. So I think this is gonna be. I think Para can use that against them if they play the mind
Hmm.
games right. I think they could do a decent number. The final 0-1 game, I don't think we need to talk about this all too much. I think Ents take Ecstatic. I'm sure you have the same agreements. Ents look pretty
Absolutely.
decent right now, so we can kind of gloss over that. The next one is a banger. The next one's an absolute heater. Two
Mm.
teams who underperformed whilst out in Poland, Katowice, but two teams who, of all the teams, basically, I would say here have the kind of the biggest, fire up their arse, right? They have to do better coming in towards this tournament. Vitality taking on Astralis. This is a banger game. I think it's a tough one to call because I think at the moment Vitality looks so weak at Kato, but then Astralis were non-existent. So there's not a lot to go off at the start of the year about where these two teams stand. But I think major time Vitality is the big talking point here. So for me personally, I'm going to lock in Vitality. I think this has got them written all over it. I think it'll probably be like a 3-mapper, and I think Stars are going to make them work for it, but I think this is a seriously tough one.
So they played twice at the Blast groups,
Yeah.
and I think Astralis won the first one, Vitality won the rematch,
Mm.
and it really felt to me that like Astralis could not keep up in the second matchup once Vitality kind of buttoned down
Yeah.
and just figured their shit out. And I think that's kind of how it's going to be in this matchup as well, where I just feel like that they can kind of bounce back from these issues a little bit quicker
I
than a
agree.
newer team like Astralis, where they're still trying to figure out leadership. They're still trying to figure out what they want to be as a team. And when the game is like this, where it's just like a very marginal difference between the two, that's where I would favor Vitality pretty much every day of the week.
Mhm.
And for that reason, I think they'll win this matchup. It'll
Yeah.
be close again, but I just like the supportive elements for that team a little bit more. Like when I look at Flames and Mezzi, I like them a little bit more than say a Yabi or a Stair.
Yeah.
And for that reason, I think that'll be what takes them over the edge, not necessarily the star power.
Yeah, I agree. I agree. So both going Vitality. This next game, I think at the moment feels pretty easy to call. We could talk about just Donk, how he's just gonna how he probably can just absolutely shit on them across basically any map. But I think actually probably again we kind of already mentioned about Cloud9, but the biggest talking point for me feels just all the room Shiro's gonna get. I don't think Cloud9 are going to be able to scratch the surface here. I think they're really going to get exposed. And also, on top of that as well, we can... I think it's very easy to fall back on numbers and stats and the firepower, but I also think Chopper's calling better than Boomich at the moment. He's calling a masterclass. Yes. And I don't think, even to the point you could talk about, Spirit out-fragging them. I think Spirit out-call them. I think they'll have Cloud9's number from the jump. I personally don't think this game will be close. You got Cloud9 who are downtrending and Spirit who... I mean, at the moment, look like the most dominant team off the back of... Or that is the most dominant tournament we've seen in, I don't know what, years, basically.
Ages, man.
I mean, since I don't think we've seen a team as dominant as just that solo captain. Not saying they are, for the year, the most dominant, but just that short period. I'm all in Spirit here. I don't think it'll be close. I think it'll be a 2-0.
Yeah, I'm in the same boat, and that was the main point that I was going to use as well. I think Chopper is a better call than Boomich right now, and even in the Monty matchup, I think he's a better caller than SDY as well. Mm-hmm. So we do have different matchups here, and it went off the back of that Monty C9 game.
Yeah.
But in either situation, I think Spirit just feel like the better calling side right now. You've got to give them their flowers for how dominant their Kato win is, and for that reason, we've kind of just got to just say that they are legends. Like we just kind of have to say that they will most likely be the 3-0 team that is pretty much a shoe-in. Mm-hmm. I don't feel like they feel any pressure in best of ones either. So as we saw at the play-ins, but this Mouse Preezy game will be pretty fun. I think I believe you have Mouse Preezy as well.
No, I have a different one. I have Heroic Paris. This is where things change now because of our previous kind of slight leeways, I guess. So we'll start with yours. Mouse Preezy. What are you thinking?
I think Mouse should take this. I do like the core of this team a little bit more than that of the Preezy guys. And as we said before, we've gone past a point where ops don't matter anymore. They definitely do. Yeah. And Torchy's still been putting up numbers. I think they'll really take care of business here. And I think Yimfat, Zershin, they'll have a field day with this roster.
Yeah. Then we got mine, Heroic Para. I don't think it's that close here. I think Heroic should expose them quite heavily. Heroic, just an absolutely better rifling core. And also, better calling. I'm going to give Kickson all the credit, man. I think he outcaught Aaron here. I like Aaron a lot. I think he's actually quite a good player. And they call quite a good game. I don't think Heroic will make this one too difficult. The next game is actually quite interesting, though. Mouse Preezy, which is similar to yours, but in a different kind of area, I guess, because of how the brackets now start to change. So... They change vastly depending on who you pick. But same thing here. I think Miles are gonna have an absolute field day for this game. I do like Preezy, and I think Preezy potentially even could be an LCQ team. Whether they make the major, I don't think really is gonna happen that much. Even you got the organization saying like, please buy our players. Like we want out, man. Give us the bag. We don't give a fuck about whether we win or lose. Which I think is kind of hilarious. But I do rate the Preezy team, just not that highly. But then you've got Heroic Guild as yours.
Yeah, and I think I'll take Heroic here as well. Guild will surprise at the LAN, and I'll eat my words after the fact. But for right now, I don't feel confident about it, and I just have to play it by ear. Like I just have to see what I see, and I see a Heroic core that just feels much stronger.
Yeah,
I can rely on them. I have expectations that they prepared better as well, and I just think that they'll be able to cruise through this.
Easy. We carry on with yours then. Cloud9 ends. I've got a different game here. Sure. Mine is Monty, I think. Yeah. So you got C9 ends.
Yeah.
Pretty, two Titan organizations there. What are you thinking?
I think this is a really close game, to be honest with you. And it's so hard to say because you've got two 50-50s in the sense that you don't know what C9 you're gonna get, in the sense that we don't know what Axel we're gonna get. We don't know what the opening situation is gonna look like. And on the end side of things, we don't know if we're gonna get the Katowice ends or if we're gonna get the open qualifier ends that we had before Kato, where they weren't able to even get through a couple rounds, and that's the big issue for me because I really liked what I saw from Goofy. I really liked what I saw from Kylar, who I had expectation that they were both gonna flounder, but they stepped up in the big
Yeah.
games. Players like Hades stepped up, and D-Hop fit in like a glove. So on paper, this Ents team has really won me over, but at the same time, I just don't have a big enough sample size for them. I can't
Yeah.
really trust that off the rip, and for that reason, I'm gonna go C9, just because
Okay.
I'd feel a little bit more in favor of a player like Electronic, like Perfecto,
Mhm.
and Boomich to just kind of save me from that kind of volatility. And I think Ents should make it through, but I think it's gonna be a tough road ahead of them.
Yeah, I mean, again, this was one of those things. Them having that number 11 seed doesn't help at all. It really does hurt. I've got Monty take on Ents, and I'm going to go the other way here. So I'm going to go for Ents in this game. I think the C9 matchup is actually quite favorable for them against Ents. I probably would agree. I bank on them, but in this one specifically, I'm actually going to go for Ents. I think I'm going to
That's fair.
play kind of the hopeful, I guess you could call it, in the sense that maybe they can keep some of that form from Poland. I think spirits are quite high, but I think the big thing for me is that I think when you've got individuals like, D has, I say putting up some of the better performances I've seen from him in a long, long time. He just looks happier. All things considered,
That's true.
he signed
He's
a
louder.
2-year extension. Exactly, Laude signed a 2-year extension. He looks more confident. I think obviously he's got the organization's backing. But I think that there's a big thing. I think probably tactically, I think enter a little bit deeper. Not only talking about Glade, but I think Cuban as well. Man, Cuban is so good at what he does. His ability to break down teams. It's one of the reasons why Apex was so good in the previous major, because Cuban and I guess the analysts around them were finding really good ways to break down teams that we'd never really thought of before. So I'm gonna go Ents here. I think Monty in that matchup they might actually have quite a tough time. And also as well, I think in just the raw AWP battle as well, Hades looks so good. He really has been stepping up in a big way. He did struggle in his first instance with tier 1. He looked, similar to like that of like a Nikodos, for example. But I think he's kind of shook off that sort of grouping, let's call it. I'll carry on with mine, finish my last 1-1 game. Apex, Gamer Legion. Do you know what? Again, I don't think it's actually gonna be that close. I think Game Legion still for me are a really solid tier 1 team. I think that the only worry is that sometimes Game Legion can come into entire tournaments and just not look like themselves. I think what was it? ESL Challenger Jönköping, I want to say, or Atlanta? No, Jönköping. Second to last one of the year, because the one you weren't doing. It was the one before yours. So
Yeah.
Jönköping.
That's on tripping.
They were pretty rough. I know they had problems with illness, in all fairness. But they did look really rough. Like nothing was going their way. And sometimes they can have tournaments like that. I want to play the card here of I don't think that's going to be the case. I think they're going to look relatively solid. I think this Game Legion team for me feel like quite a solid tier 1 team, where I think Apex don't. I don't have my back sense basically at all. I've not seen any sort of proof yet that Sense is a kind of a top player or player that like I even remotely care about. I mean, like even when you talk about that kind of spirit game, if Sense was to get more than 10 kills, I would be baffled. I'd be beyond that impressed. Like, and then in Game Legion, I think it's similar. Just going back to that spirit game. In all fairness, if Sense gets more than 10 kills in that game, man, I'll buy. I'll buy a jersey. I said this last time when we did record this. I will buy an Apex jersey with Sense on the back if you can get more than 10 kills against Spirit. I think there's just no chance. I think against Gamer Legion, I think he's really going to get exposed. I think he couldn't fill the boots of Stiko. They've brought him back now, but like you said, Sense is new to his calling role. And is it working? I still haven't seen the evidence to prove that it is. I mean, I think this team for me feels so reliant on like Jacob, right? And if Jacob can't frag, they're in such trouble. Where I think the Game Legion core feel quite comfortable at the moment. I think Isaac's putting up really good numbers, and I think he's doing very solid. I think Volt's doing his job as well. So I'm going Game Legion here. I think your final one is Game Legion Ecstatic. Oh
No. It's also Gamer Legion Apex, and
Yeah, it is. Sorry, I was
I'll
looking
give my
here.
2 cents on it.
Yeah,
I do feel like I'd favor Gamer Legion as well here.
yeah.
The thing about Sense is I think he improved at the end of his tenure with that iteration with Kixan at Atlanta. Like I actually thought if he was putting up like not necessarily MVP numbers, but he was an MVP of that team where
Sure.
he kind of figured out his roles very well. But now he's calling. He is now in Kicksands roles,
Yeah.
and that is the big worry to me. And I don't feel very confident in that just yet. Maybe down the road, maybe 3 months, 6 months from now, because I
Yeah.
do think that if you give him time, he can improve at that level. But yeah, I just feel I'm going to be giving Snacks the benefit of the doubt here pretty
Sure.
much every single time. And yeah, I mean these O2 games though, my goodness, I wouldn't want to be there for
I,
either casting them, watching them, being involved in these games at all.
I
Oh
feel
my god.
I feel for whoever's casting these. I mean, I think mine's slightly different to yours. Yeah,
Yeah, a
slightly
little bit.
different. We'll start with yours. So you've got Ecstatic OG and then Nexus Para. What are you feeling? What are you feeling here?
To me, I don't really care about Ecstatic. I'll be honest
Yeah.
with you. Like it came to a point where like I was excited to see a Manx or a Fasher or like a like not even a Salazar who they had a different opera previously. Oh, Lucky.
Yes,
I think.
Lucky. Yeah, he's not an
and
espionage.
and
Yeah.
and those two players were all fun in some way, shape, or form. But now I just don't care about any of the players on this team. Like I really don't. And
Mm-hmm.
apart from Crown, and
Yeah.
I mean at least on OG I can say like oh maybe Heavy God or maybe Regali, and that just to me just feels like okay maybe that's enough. And against this level of opposition, I have an expectation that at least OG can come out on top of this. I
Yeah.
actually think it's going to be like a 3 map affair still,
Yeah.
and it'll be ugly, but I'll take them to take
Mm-hmm.
it. And the other game, I don't like this matchup either. This one just sounds like so painful. This is like an EPL matchup, but like you're gonna have to have like Jackie or Vince casting this, and I
Yeah.
feel so bad for any of these guys that are
Whoever's
at
casting
this
it,
online.
this actually might be the worst game at an RMR of all time. I think it might be up
Uh,
there. As in, like, this is like what Nexus are ranked like 50 something in the world, and Para 41. Like, this is like barely even a CCT level game here.
yeah,
This is rough. I actually like kind of like the well, I like the individuals on both teams, and I actually saw both of these guys, like both sets of these players, basically out in ISF. Aaron was of Hungary, and the next guys were Romania. But Jesus Christ, like this being like an RMR game, I feel for whoever's casting this. This may be one of the worst games at an RMR. I think this might be the lowest viewed game of all RMRs. I think it's probably safe to say.
yeah, I agree. I honestly don't even know where I'm gonna go with this. It doesn't even matter for my predictions, anyways. So I'm
Yeah.
just gonna go Para. Fuck
Okay.
it. I don't really care.
Fair. I'll do mine. Nexus OG. This game, I don't know what we're gonna get out of Nexus here. I don't know what this. I mean, there's the only caveat for Nexus is that Zello is actually still a decent player. I think is maybe something to talk about.
Oh, that
But
is true.
I'm still gonna go OG here. I think Regali is better. They know each other very well. Obviously, Regali also being Romanian as well, and I think that's probably maybe gonna be a big plus for OG if they do get this game. Is that Regali knows all of these players like the back of his hand. This is his scene. These are his guys. He knows exactly what he's coming against, who the weaknesses are, and kind of where they like to play. And I'm sure he probably pugs them all the time too. So I think, as much as I hate to say it, that OG are going to get a win, I think OG will get a win there, which pains me. And then Guild Ecstatic, I don't think is even close. I don't think it's even a conversation. I think Guild should, in a best of three, they should blow Ecstatic out of the water in that one and make that relatively plain sailing. I'll go straight to round 4 with mine, and I'll do my first 2-1 game. Cloud9 Ents. Now, this is, if I'm right in saying, is one you had, right? So you had this. Like I said, off the back of yours, I'm agreeing with you. I think Cloud9 have a good chance here. I think I'm relying a lot upon them to maybe find that consistency again. I basically agree on a lot of sentiments that you went for in terms of why Cloud9 are better. The only thing that worries me, which makes me tempted to pick Ents, is just whether Haiti gets a lot of room. But then again, I've said that quite a while. Every time I watch Cloud9 when they play tournaments, especially over the last few months since they've gone to this 5 rifle core, and they still find wins, right? They come against teams of AWPers, traditional AWPers, and they're not given the space. So I think this is the only worrying thing for me about Ents is that I don't know whether the momentum carries on. I think in a matchup, like I said here against Monty, I think they're tactically a lot deeper. I don't know if they're tactically considerably deeper than Cloud9. I think Cloud9 obviously We already kind of know the kind of the coaching staff around them, pretty solid. I think Boomich has been calling relatively well, but I think also just Boomich's like tendencies as like a puggy IGL, I love. And I don't know if Glaze is going to be given all the room to work with like he was at Kato. So I'm going to go Cloud9 here. But I do think that game actually will be kind of close. And then for yours, you've got Monty Mouse.
Monty Mouse, interesting. It is a best of three, which does make the upset potential a little bit more difficult for a Monty, I'd say. Let's think. So if I go down the list of individuals, I go World 2K to Torzi. I probably take Torzi there. If I go to maybe a Demka and a Yimfat, I'd probably take Yimfat. If I take an SDY and a Brolin, I take. Ooh, that's tough.
Yeah.
I mean, honestly, I'd say setup. Maybe I'd give to Brolin there, just because of the system that he has. I'd say Shuhei is a better caller in that sense compared to SDY. Or sorry, I should probably say it's probably Krasnal to Brolin, and I take Brolin there. And then SDY to Shuhei, I take Shuhei. So yeah, I guess pound for pound, I'd probably go Mouse here. And I do like the entries. I take Xertion over Bro any day of the week. And for that reason, I just feel like if I had to go down the list, I'd pretty much give advantage Mouse almost every time down that list. So
there we go.
I think it'll still be a good game. It'll be a close one, and either team will be definitely deserved of a spot at the major, I think.
Then Astralis Cloud9. How you feeling here?
Ooh, this is a tough game, and honestly, I do think that like a player like Device is definitely the one to really abuse the op advantage that they have here. There is no player on Cloud9 to ever have a shot at taking down Device in a head-to-head. And that alone just gives me pure satisfaction they'll be able to win. That carry performance will be there. And then you're also getting a stable performance from players like Stown and players like BlameF that if Axile even has a slight slip up or Hobbit has a slight slip up, this game is over.
Yeah, agreed. Do you want to finish off your 2-1s as well then? So Gamer Legion Heroic,
Sure.
how you feeling there?
Honestly, I'm gonna continue the heroic trend here.
Yeah.
And I'm just gonna say that they get the job done. I think Gamer Legion will get their odd upsets, and I think they could sneak their way through. But I do think that heroic just feels to me like the more exciting core, and it sounds like a risk to take, but this is probably the ripest opportunity they're gonna get in terms of their poor seeding to make it through. And I don't know. I just really like Kixan. I really like Saw. And that pairing, I hope they have a lot of success, and I do think they should go through.
Yeah. Then we got mine. I got Astralis Heroic. Banger, right? Absolute banger. Redemption, revenge, all of the rest. I think this is kind of the big conversation though. Heroic, when they won, they're very funny with doing like no buybacks or whatever, or no give backs, that kind of thing. They're very good with it. The social media team are pretty up there. They're pretty funny. I am sticking with the trend I was saying earlier. I think Astralis, I think they are going to have this mindset of like, we'd really fucked it at Kato, so we've had time to work on it. I think as well, they'll be a little bit more ready for the matchup specifically. I think, individuals like Stabby, Stown and Yabi, may I say, or Stabby, in all fairness, will be a little bit ready, kind of raring to go. I'm going to go Heroic. I think they've got a much better chance. I'm going to go Astralis, sorry. They got a much better chance over Heroic. I do think Heroic are pretty good. I like what I've seen from them. I still think there's pitfalls. I back the rifling core of Astralis over the individual of Nerds is probably the way I go about it, I think, right now. But who knows? Maybe they can kind of come back to prove me wrong. In the Game Legion Mouse game, I'll keep it kind of brief. I think Mouse take that. I do like Game Legion. Like I said, I've been kind of pretty hyped about them, but I think all things considered, Mouse for me are the more solid team at the moment. I think just in terms of, again, like just the raw, if you look at kind of like, maybe go the other way, the kind of the weakest player on both, if we're going to say it's maybe Brolin towards Mouse, who's been, taking the time to adjust to that role, or Game Legion with Kiosk, I still take Brolin all day in that matchup. When you think of like, the other assets of where they can find firepower, the only big difference that I think Game Legion have, I think they have a better AWPer. I do actually rate A-Core higher, but will that make a big difference overall? I don't think so. If Xertion and Yimfat show up, I think they can make a big difference. I'll do my 1-2s then first, before we then go in towards yours. Apex versus Guild. I think that's actually quite a good game. Guild have looked quite bad, as we said recently. But in terms of the ceiling of both of these two teams, I actually think Guild have a higher ceiling. I think Guild also have a considerably lower floor, which is the big issue with Guild. It's like they've got a much wider scope of where this team fits in. But I still rate Guild here higher. So I'm going to lock them in. I'm still unsure on Apex. I mean, obviously, it'd be quite nice for them to prove me wrong. But yeah, I definitely think they're a little bit more kind of up in the air for me. Then we go to the 1-2 teams. Now, this might be a bit outlandish, but I'm actually going to go Para here. I've kind of continued to be kind of shitting on OG, and arguably I think deservedly so. Yeah, they probably put work in, but it's like,
but you don't value that work at all, and you think they're terrible.
And it's like basically, who would I prefer to win here? Para all day. Like, do I want OG to succeed? No, of course not. Who does, right? You know what I mean? Like, it's like, yeah. It's a picky poison type scenario. I actually think, you know, I like the narrative and the storyline around Para winning more than I even give a remote fuck about OG. So I'm not even gonna gloss about it too much. It's just, it's a pure, it's a choice from the heart, not from the head. Is probably the way I'm gonna go here. And then finishing off things with Monty Preezy. Actually, quite a good game. These are two sides who actually grind out online. There's so many demos on both of them, which I think is gonna be very good for prep. But I'm gonna take Monty here in the 1-2. I think, like I say, you know, it's Preezy. It's good for them to be here. I think there's definitely limitations on this team. I still think Monty are a tier 1 team, where I don't think Preezy are. It's as simple as that. These are two teams that grind out, you know, a lot of these kind of tier 2 online tournaments. However, Monty grind out more. You know, they had the second most maps played in 2023, just behind Nexus, and the majority of them are wins, right? Which I think says a lot. Where for Preezy, you know, yes, they've won recently, but I mean, who really cares? I think it's probably the better way to go about it. We'll go on to your 1-2 games, though.
Yeah, I think, okay, so I have Apex Para, and look, I think Apex plays some really resilient Counter-Strike, and I really do like that. Regardless of the kind of changes that they're going through, they still managed to stick around, and they stuck around a lot of, definitely longer than I expected them to at Kato, and I just think that they're a better team than Para here, and unfortunately that matchup is just too difficult to overcome. Yep. Guild OG, you know what, I'm going to follow the same kind of mantra here as you. Yeah. I think Guild Eagles have the better ceiling. I'm not really excited about this OG roster, and I think I'm going to take them. The 1-2 game, that's also pretty straightforward. Ents, Preezy, Ents just feels very comfortable in that sense. I think Hades is going to run amok. But I'll go into my 2-2, and I'll give it a little bit more there. But, oh my goodness, Gamer Legion Ents is just such a terrible 2-2, because I love both of these teams. Yeah. And I'd love either one of these teams to be here. But I don't know. I like the end story a little bit more. I want to see Glaive back in another major. I want to see Deha have another chance of redemption alongside Hades. And, you know, Kylar, Goofy, they have a chance to rewrite the wrongs of 9 and say, we weren't a fluke online team and just go 0-3 at the Legend stage. We're here to play. And I want to see that story continue, and I think I'm going to have them go through. The Monty Apex game, I think that this is also a really tough matchup. But I've spoken ad nauseum about the consistency of Monty, and this is, I think, where the story of Apex runs dry. They've hung around till the very last round, but I don't think that Monty or Apex will be able to keep up with Monty at this point. I like that sort of consistency, and I'm going to take them. And then C9 Guild Eagles is actually going to be like, I feel like it's going to be like the FaZe BNE type game where it just gets very ugly. It's very gross. There is really a world where Guild Eagles can close. But, you know, it's crunch time. It's where Electronic, Perfecto, and Boomich thrive in. I think they're going to be the last team to qualify for the major, and I think that Guild Eagles will not have a chance, and that'll be my qualifying teams.
There we go. I'll finish off mine then. Heroic taking on Guild Eagles. I'm going to go Heroic here. I just really do like this team at the moment. Like I kind of saying, pretty sure, was this one of my earlier matchups as well? What do I feel like I remember?
It can't be.
Oh, no, it can't be. No, it can't. What am I saying? But yeah, Heroic taking on Guild. I think if this game gets puggy or if it gets scrappy, I just bank on the individuals on Heroic. And I know we've kind of, again, I guess we've kind of similar spoken about it, I think, with, was it Torzi and Get? So, you know, when we look at kind of the AWPers, you know, Nikodos is pretty fraudulent at the best of times, but I still bank him over GXX. I think Nerds can absolutely run amok. You know, if you look at kind of the best riflers over towards Guild of, you know, Wanflatcher or Synopsy or Rigon, I still value Nerds higher than them. And then calling-wise, I just value Kickstand so much higher. So I'm going heroic here. Ent Para, much I
Agreed.
love the Para story and I've loved what we've seen from them. I'm going to obviously have to lock in Ents. I just think they have a much, much higher ceiling and a much higher floor as well. I think it's probably the better way to go about it. I think Game Legion Monty is actually quite close here. This one feels quite difficult to call because these are two sides who are kind of the tier 2 teams that made it into tier 1. But then it's also like there are also teams that we would see at ESL challenges, for example, and are happy to kind of dip into the tier 1.5. So I would say these kind of like the upper echelon of tier 1.5 into the lower echelon of tier 1. But I'm going to go Monty here. I like the Game Legion story. I said they have been looking like a tier 1 team, but Monty are the only team that have remained a tier 1 team consistently since Blast, in my opinion, despite the changes they had to go through of losing someone like Boros. So that is going to be mine. So I've got Vitality and Spirit 3-0. I've got Cloud9, Astralis, and Mouse 3-1. And I've got Ents, Heroic, and Monty 3-2. And then yours are very similar. The 3-1s, of course, being Astralis, Mouse, Heroic, and your 3-2s being Monty, Cloud9, and Ents. And of course, with mine, I guess
I
like
believe we have the same one. I guess just the difference in the spacing.
yeah, just I guess difference in terms of yeah. Oh, apart from I've got I guess Apex going 1-3, where you've got them going 2-3 to the LCQ. I think it's like a different, and you've got Para going out where I've got Para going through to LCQ.
So I
Minor
guess we can
differences.
decide maybe on through legends and contenders, basically on where these final standings end up, because we do have similar
Yeah.
teams being picked here. I don't think we have enough differences to pick teams, but we could do like placings.
I mean, do you know what? Maybe, yeah, maybe that's the well, actually, no, maybe we do in just terms of like how many of these we get right. So like in terms of just pure how many we get right. Do you know what I mean? Which that'll be a lot more cutthroat because there's a chance that Vitality could go 3-1 with a hiccup or something like that. So maybe that could give us a bit more like leeway. But
Yeah.
we'll get to that when we get to that. We'll quickly run through a little fantasy of what we want to do. We'll keep it relatively brief. I know we're both not the biggest fans of fantasy, but we'll try and work with something here. So I think, is there any players? We were talking about kind of Icy being quite good as a little budget player. Is there any players for you that you feel like you want to absolutely lock in coming in towards this? I mean,
Here,
even
let
an
me-
individual like Yabi at 194 doesn't feel too bad. Like that sort of player feels pretty good. But yeah, I'm trying to think of like what's the play here of like what player can we get. Obviously, okay, so I had Nico and I had Frozen. I managed to squeeze 2 golds in within 2 silvers and 1 bronze. So we can probably do something similar. It's just kind of what do we want to do. I think it's safe to say probably donks off the cards. I don't think it's...
Yeah, 100%.
I actually
We're not touching that.
think the only way that you make Spirit work is picking up Magics. Because I don't think Chopper's going to get the numbers enough. I think Magics will get the supporting util numbers. But like, they just won't get the frags. Like Shiro, I don't think will be given that many opportunities to frag because Dong's going to keep running around. I mean, we saw he had more multi-kills than single kills like Kato, which is just insane. So like, I don't know if he's going to be given the luxury of getting as many frags to warrant the 229 price point here. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah, I don't really value touching Spirit at all here. I actually
Yeah.
look at a Shuhei at 190k. That feels pretty good to
Okay.
potentially take as like a leader and just get the mouse points off of their
True.
wins.
True.
That could be pretty valuable. I'm trying to look at across the board. So like even players
okay.
like Bakem, who's still silver, is like 200k. Like
Yeah.
it's not even like these players are cheap, you know.
Do you know what I'm thinking? Like, why don't we look at, okay, so I like the Shuhei one, but let's look at the big ticket players first, and then we can work around them, right? So
Sure, yeah.
I feel like getting more from Vitality feels like a must. But it's kind of weird you want to go. I don't think Zyru's worth that price point in terms of 241. It just seems so expensive. So it's a question of do you want to go Spinks or Flames? I'd probably say Spinks here personally.
Agreed. Yeah, no, I think I'd go Spinks here as well. I do feel like Flames is a little inconsistent, and I mean he's got some tougher roles. I feel so.
Yeah, exactly.
There's a world where he bombs out. So yeah, let's do Spinks. Do we have room for another gold here?
Yes, we can make it work. I did it in Group A, so we can. Maybe a Mouse player is not a bad shout, or an Astralis player maybe. The Ice 215 as an AWPer.
That's not bad.
An AWP roll. I think we can make that work, and that leaves us
Let's
what?
try it.
550 to get 3 more players. That's very doable. Very, very doable. Why don't we lock in Shuhei then? And then he can be our leader, right? So we got these two as like the golds. Shuhei is our leader. And that leaves us with 375 to work with. And you were saying earlier, 200k, who was it for? 200k for Jacob.
Jacob?
Yeah. And that would leave us then with the opportunity to get maybe, yeah, okay. You know, we'd have to maybe dip and dive into some of the lesser players. But you kind of, if you have 2 golds, you kind of always have to get a bronze anyway. It's just a question of, do you maybe want to go... Wait, okay, actually, let me go the other way. I always like to do this. Who's like the cheapest? Okay, let's just say Urshan's the cheapest. Who could you then get as a player around them? See, that's when you can maybe get like a Mezzi. You know what I mean? Mezzi or Bro or Krasnal or Axile. You know, do you take the chance on Axile popping off maybe? Or that Jacob pick up? Or Goofy? You know, we kind of spoke about how we like what we see out of Goofy. Carlos obviously looked quite good, but obviously just a little bit too. I think 204k and we have 202. It's unfortunate. I don't know if he is the cheapest, that Urshan guy. But then also there's a real world in which you lose a lot of points from somebody who really bots out. Like if Nex has just got 03, which is like a strong chance, I think you lose quite a lot of team points. So then is it maybe, rather than going for like one shit player and one really good player, do you maybe go for like just 2 alright ones? You know what I mean? Kind of vibe.
I think Spink's device is going to give us loads of points, and I think Shuhei might give us via the leader as well. So yeah. I think 2 all-right players sounds like probably the better move. We take Mezzi.
Yeah, if you take Mezzi, like a TMB, he's not even that bad of a shout.
Yeah, TMB isn't bad.
Senary's not a terrible one as like a cheap alternative. You know what I mean? I probably don't want to touch OG. I'd personally say.
Agreed. Yeah, I wouldn't touch OG as well. Sense is also an option, but as we said, I think he'd really struggle.
Yeah.
I don't know. Maybe TMB is the move here. I think that TMB is probably the best of this bunch.
I'd agree. I think there's actually a chance that Preezy could cause an issue here. I like that. I like that. Spinks and Device give me the bulk of the points. Shuhei as the leader just should guarantee wins. Mezzi, put him on any supporting role and he should be absolutely fine. I mean, we can go through roles now, actually. Actually, we'll start with the easy one. Device, main orb. Nice and easy, nice and simple. Shuhei, we can give him the leader. Pretty simple. I'm just saying, it's probably, I don't think there will be anything better to give him.
No, definitely leader here, I think.
Yeah, I think it's a safe call as well, right? Because they'll get... And then we go, okay, to Spinks, you want to make sure he's getting as much as possible. Defender's not a bad one. Multifrag is pretty good. I had that on Nico in Group A, and he did quite well. Or Headshot Machine. That's not a bad one
either. Yeah, either multi-kill or Defender is kind of where I see. Actually, I might give Defender to Mezzi even.
Yeah, why don't we go Multifrag? I think that's a pretty good one for Spinks. He should get it on both CT and T side, and then... Oh, actually, he has an insane headshot percentage.
Okay.
All right.
I'll take that.
Maybe or support, which I think is also pretty good for Mezzi, in all fairness.
Right, yeah.
That's 47, 43.
I think you have a good upside off the headshot machine, even though I'd probably give him support role, but yeah.
And then he leaves with this one. I mean, there's also a word we can do this, put him on noob, but I think so that I don't think that's a bad thing to have here, entry fragger, but just because he should just get traded.
Do that, yeah. I think that works.
And then you got multi-fragger main or I like that. Okay, I'm pretty happy with that. Let me just double check before we do it if any of these are worth just swapping over. No, they're not. Okay, easy. I think that's a relatively safe team by all standards. So that's what we're going with, ladies and gents. That's also Group B, done and dusted. So without further ado, of course, let us know what you guys have gone for. Let us know what you're feeling in terms of who you think's gonna make it through. If you agree, if you disagree, let us know your fancies as well. And I guess until next time, we'll probably call it. I think probably the next time you'll see us will be around major time when we do the next iteration of this. And of course, the first punishment. There has to be a punishment because we have got different runs of the mill. So we'll see how it pans out. But that'll be that, ladies and gentlemen. Thank you very much for joining us. It's been a pleasure. And until next time, pre-major, I think this is the next one I guess we'll do. That's when you'll see us. It's been a pleasure. Paladin, thanks for joining us once again. Of course, go and check out his links. They are below. We'll be back very, very soon. See you soon. Take care.